Welcome to the Financial Pathway Podcast. We're here to help you go to the next level in your finances with practical advice from speaker and financial planner Nate Skelly.
So last episode, we talked about retirement income and really focused on what do you need to know about annuities. And so if you didn't listen to that one, I'd recommend just going back, give that one a quick listen, because it really sets up what we want to talk about today. And that is, what's the smartest way to withdraw from your retirement savings? So you've built up money over time in your 401k, your Roth IRA, maybe you've got an inheritance, you've got a lump sum of money, and you know you need to use it for retirement. You need to withdraw from it, but what's the smartest way to go about it? You remember the story of Goldilocks? You know, she finds the bear's house in the woods, and there's the beds. You know, one's too big, one's too small, one's just right. And the bowls of porridge, one's too hot, one's too cold, one's just right. Now, as I'm saying that out loud, I'm wondering if I'm misremembering that story. I think that's how it goes. It's been a long time, but you get the point, right? Life is full of those things where you're trying to find the sweet spot. Not too much this way, not too much that way, just somewhere in the middle. My favorite summer snack is frozen watermelon. It is amazing. Okay, do yourself a favor. Watermelon's in season. If you haven't tried it, it's just what it sounds like. Super easy. Take some watermelon slices, chop up the watermelon into little cubes, throw it in a bowl, put it in the freezer. But here's the trick. I sound like some kind of chef or connoisseur. It's like the most basic snack. Keep it in the freezer for like an hour, hour and a half tops. Because if you leave it in there for like 5 hours, they're just gonna be like ice cubes, and you have to let them thaw. And if you put them in for 15 minutes, they're just really cold watermelon. But like there's a sweet spot. Like after about an hour, hour and a half, they're frozen, but not so like frozen solid that you can't bite into them. They're really good. I love them. You may think it's weird. I think it's awesome. Try it. Here's why I even get into that, the whole Goldilocks thing. With retirement withdrawals, that's what we're shooting for. We're trying to find that Goldilocks zone. Not too much this way, not too much that way. Let's find that sweet spot in the middle. Because on one hand, you definitely don't want to be reckless. And you just start spending, and then 10 years go by, and oh no, my money's gone. And now what am I going to do? I got to live out the rest of my days in retirement pinching pennies on Social Security. I have to go back to work. Don't want to do that. But on the other hand, I mean, you don't want to die with a mountain of cash that you never used. You spent years sacrificing and saving so that you would have money for retirement. So you need to give yourself permission to use it. So is there some kind of middle ground between overspending and underspending your retirement nest egg? Is there a way to do that? Well, there's two big problems to this. Number one, we don't know how long we're going to be retired, which is a nice way of saying we don't know when we're going to die. So how many years does this money need to last? Could be 20, could be 2, could be 35. Hard to say. And the other problem is we don't know what the market's going to do. Market can be unpredictable. I mean, we know that it has a consistent long-term track record of growth, but in the short term, the only thing we know is there are going to be times where it's way up. There's going to be times where it's way down. And when that's going to happen, nobody really knows. So what we need is some kind of strategy that works in all kinds of scenarios, good or bad. Kind of like we're going on a trip and we don't know the destination yet. We don't know the terrain. So probably shouldn't choose a motorcycle. Probably shouldn't choose a convertible. Probably best to pick an all-terrain vehicle, something that's going to get us around no matter what the environment is like, right? So here's how this strategy works. And this is what I want to dig into today, this guardrail strategy that I've used with clients and I think is really the best way that I know of to maximize all of these things and find that sweet spot. Here's the way it works. We start with the amount of money that you have saved. For sake of illustration, I'm going to use $1 million because it's a nice even number when we're thinking about percentages and those types of things. It's simple. Okay. By the way, this is for example. Okay. So the specific numbers that I would use with clients would vary based on different personal factors. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I have about $1 million. So I guess what Nate is saying is exactly what I need to do. Okay. This is for example. So to start this journey, here's what we're going to do. We're retired. got $1 million. How do we start withdrawing from this nest egg to help supplement our income, our Social Security, and another source of income? What we're going to do is we're going to set an initial withdrawal amount, and we're going to set that at $4,000 a month. That works out to $48,000 a year. And then what we're going to do is, on a piece of paper, we're going to set 2 guardrails on this account. Imagine you're winding down a mountain road as you're spending your money, and we don't want to go off the road on one side or the other. We have these guardrails that are going to allow us to gently ease our way down the mountainside. So there's going to be an upper guardrail and a lower guardrail. The upper guardrail, we're going to set it at $1,250,000. So imagine a line with $1 million across, a line above it at $1,250,000, and then a lower guardrail of $833,000. And here's the rule. As long as our account balance stays between these two numbers, our upper and lower guardrail, we will continue withdrawing $4,000 a month. Now, what happens if the account drops and we go below the lower guardrail? Maybe because the market hit a bad patch, we went into a recession. Or maybe you made a withdrawal. Maybe you bought a car, you made a down payment on a vacation home, you bought an RV. Well, if it goes below the lower guardrail, the rule is we're going to temporarily tighten our belt and we're going to decrease the monthly withdrawal to $3,600. And we're going to keep it there until our nest egg recovers and goes back above that line. And what we're doing is, by being willing to take a little bit less in the bad times, what it's going to do for us is it's going to open up the ability to take out a lot more when things are good. Now, conversely, what if we go above the upper guardrail? What if things go really well to start retirement? Market's doing great, and it actually starts to grow. If we go above that upper guardrail, we can go ahead and increase our monthly income. We can give ourselves a raise, and we can bump it up to $4,400 a month. And then what we do is we reset the guardrails based on the new account balance. So we create a new upper guardrail and a new lower guardrail, and we'll continue with that $4,400 a month until the account moves past a guardrail again. Now, why does this work? Why is this a good strategy? Well, not to get all nerdy on the numbers here, the strategy is based on research done by these guys, Guyton and Klinger. So sometimes they're referred to as the Guyton-Klinger guardrails. But they did a ton of research and dove into all the numbers and back tested. And what they found is that in every historical scenario, everything from the Great Depression to World War II, the inflation and oil crisis of the 1970s, the Great Recession of 2008, all of it, this approach works. Now, that's not to say it's a guarantee that because it has worked up to this point, it's definitely always going to work going forward. But based on everything we know, it is an excellent strategy and the best that I know of to help us maximize our money in retirement. Now, a big reason why I like this approach is because instead of taking out a flat percentage each year, because you may have heard of the 4% rule. In fact, I've talked about it on the podcast before, kind of a rule of thumb that people will say is, oh, you can take out 4% a year of your retirement savings safely. And while, again, that historically has been shown to work, it does limit how much you can take, especially at the beginning. With the guardrails approach, we can take out quite a bit more. Instead of 4%, we can start with 4.5% to 5%, which maybe that doesn't sound like a big difference when we're talking on percentage basis, but on dollar amount, we're talking about with $1 million portfolio, the difference between $40,000 a year and $48,000 a year. I mean, that's a sizable difference. That's just going from 4% to 4.8%. If we go to 5%, that's $50,000 a year. I mean, that's a significant difference. And the reason it works is because what we're doing is we're creating dynamic rules, and by being willing to decrease our withdrawals in those bad times, it gives us a much higher chance of success overall. Now, another great thing about this is that we really only need to use the lower guardrails in the first half of retirement years. Because what we're trying to avoid is when we retire, we don't know what the direction the market's going to take in those early retirement years, and we just get unlucky and we retire at a time right before the market drops, and we're using like that 4% rule. That could really wreck us because we're just taking money out, and we're not giving our account time to recover and get back because we're taking out so much in those early years. It's called the sequence of returns risk. And this dynamic guardrails rules allows us to avoid that if we get unlucky. But also conversely, If we start out at a really fortunate time and we start retirement at a great, at a great stretch where the market's doing really well, the 4% rule doesn't allow you to go ahead and take more of that hard-earned money and go ahead and use it now. Because let's be honest, those early retirement years are usually the ones where you want to do the most stuff. It's when people want to take trips. It's when they want to see family. It's when they want to travel and have experiences and go out to eat more and do activities. Usually the early retirement years are the ones where you want to have more access to your money as opposed to later on in retirement. And with these guardrail rules, we need to have the lower guardrail, but really only for the first half of our retirement. The last 15 years of the plan, we really can go ahead and and do away with the lower guardrail, because by then we've protected ourselves sufficiently. We only have, ostensibly, at least we're planning, only about 15 more years. So there's not as much of a need to go ahead and tighten the belt if the account goes below that lower guardrail, because it still should work out for us to not outspend our money when we have that shorter time frame. Another big reason why this works, and again, I want to explain this, but I don't want to get too in the weeds, and especially since I'm not visualizing this and putting charts and graphs in front of you. But another big reason why this works is because inside of the account, what we're doing as far as the actual investments, we're keeping a good balance of growth investments and conservative investments. When you're young and you're just starting out, you really should just be in growth investments, because that's the whole point. You're trying to grow your money over the long term and you've got a long time frame. Once you get to retirement, however, you can't have all your money in growth, but you also shouldn't have none of your money in growth, because the average American's going to live about 30 years, 25 to 30 years in retirement. So you still need your money to grow a little bit, but you just can't be as aggressive. So you don't want to invest your entire nest egg in growth investments when you're reaching retirement. Here's the idea. You want to keep about 5 to 7 years worth of your yearly spending in conservative investments, and then you can go ahead and keep the rest in growth investments. And here's the reasoning behind that. So if you're taking out $48,000 a year, multiply that times 5, that works out to about $250,000. If you want to split the difference, go 6 years, about $300,000. So in this scenario, $1 million, let's keep about $300,000 in conservative investments. Let's keep $700,000 in growth investments, about a 70-30 split. Why? Well, what happens if the market drops? What if we get really unfortunate? On average, we have a drop of 20% or more in the market once every 4 to 5 years. That's not like clockwork. I mean, sometimes it takes longer than that. Sometimes it takes shorter, but on average, it's every 4 or 5 years. So if that happens right as we retire, well, we don't really want to be selling from our growth investments while they're down, because we know historically what has happened every single time there's been a recession. Growth investments go down, but then what do? They recover and they shoot back up, and they go back up higher than they were before, right? But if we're selling our growth investments while they're down, we're really limiting their ability to bounce back. So what we can be doing instead is that $4,000 a month that we're taking out. If the stock market's down, let's not take it out of the growth investments. Let's take it out of the conservative investments. So you can think of the conservative investments like your like a safety cushion. It's like a barrier between your withdrawals and your long-term growth money. And the reason 5 to 7 years is a good time frame is because typically the typical bear market only takes a couple years to recover, and even really bad ones 4 or 5. So if you have 5 to 7 years worth of conservative investments like bonds that you can use as a cushion, as a buffer, that can hold you over until your growth investments eventually recover and rebound, and then you're able to straighten that out going forward. So hope that makes sense as to your rationale behind that investment mix. So let's go back to our example for a second. Let's say we're going to retire at age 60. $1 million, taking out $48,000 a year, $4,000 a month. We got our lower, upper guardrail. Let's assume we live until 90. Okay. Well, here's what I did. This is really interesting because in preparation for the podcast, I was like, well, let's actually crunch the numbers here. I ran the simulation going back 122 years of market history, ran it for 122 years. Guess how many of those 122 years the strategy failed that I just described? 0. The average ending balance out of all those 122 years, average ending balance after 30 years was between 800 and 900,000. So the average person using this strategy generated 30 years of income, and then they still finished with almost as much money as they started with. That's amazing. In the worst case scenario, they finished with 270,000 to pass on to their beneficiaries. Best case scenario, they finished with 2 million. So if you'll remember in the previous episode, I talked about that is one of the drawbacks of certain types of annuities where you choose the lifetime income. Okay, you get the lifetime income, but when it's over, it's over. No money left. No money left to pass on to beneficiaries. This is one of the big things I love about the guardrail strategy is historically when you can follow these rules as they're set up, they allow you to pass on a significant amount of money to your beneficiaries one day while still being able to generate that income. And it's such a powerful strategy. And what I love about it, it's really the best way that I know of to just thread that needle of, hey, how do I have passive income for retirement? How do I make sure that I have a consistent source of income? How do I still grow the money over time? How do I make sure that this is still doing something for me? How do I make sure I maximize the impact of my nest egg? Because I've worked really hard and I've been really diligent and I've sacrificed to get to this point, and I want to make every dollar count. And then how do I still have the opportunity to leave something behind for the people or the causes that I care about? And this is a great way to be able to just check all of those boxes. So if you are in these preparation stages for retirement, maybe you're a few years away, maybe you're already in retirement and you want to talk more, you want to understand more about implementing that guardrail strategy, you can shoot me an email, info@nateskelly.com. You can go to my website, nateskelly.com, schedule a quick call with me there. Happy to talk with you more about what that looks like. And then lastly, thanks for listening, but also thanks Luke and Musk Increased Media for producing. And I will see you all on our next episode talking about retirement.